Hello, everyone. This is Office Hours 29, Speak AI. Getting together. It's 12:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but happy to be here. A couple people in slightly different locations today. Actually, 3 or 4 in different locations today. Welcome to Office Hours. Nice to see you guys. Thank you so much for joining. Interesting. Usually my command has been not a command. I'm not really a commander, to be honest. It was like, if you're coming, you better bring topics. And this week everyone came with topics, and I came with none. So I'm actually quite happy about that. That means that I can maybe listen or not. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Last week, only Nihal and I showed up. I think it was last week, and we broke our chain of fingers going up. It was getting complex, so the tradition is dead. I'm sorry for anyone who liked.
Maths is getting complex here.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You know, maybe at one point it's like once we're on Office Hours 100 and we have okay, that's not probably gonna. The timeline's not gonna work where it's like we have 100 employees and it's Office Hours 100. It's probably not gonna quite happen that quick, and we all hold up.
Sounds like a good goal.
Okay. Okay. I mean, that'd be
still 60,
okay.
80 more weeks.
Okay. All right. There we go. So we'll aim for that. I guess let's go quick round of intros, and then we'll jump into some topics here. So quickly, 𝗨𝗪 𝗏𝗏. Who am I? Today I am in Mount Bridges. I'm at home, I would say, in my hometown outside from London. I'm really interested in right now. It's like, I mean, I'm always interested in this, but like data visualization and like one of these metaphors that we've been talking about is like, how do you find like gold? How do you find insights? And I had spent a lot of time in that, doing it for analytics data for marketing, but really trying to find that in language and apply that across, you know, still marketing and media, but also in research in some really interesting places through Speak. So glad to be fostering that and working with some great people to make that happen. And that includes you 3.
Beautiful. Okay, I'm glad to back on the office hours this week. Last week was a very busy one this week because working on some complex thing here for the Better Speak platform. I'm 𝗏𝗏𝗁 𝗨𝗏. I'm CTO at Speak here and working on the different technologies from IoT, voice, and the AI and machine learning. And last week, very focused on the development and very happy and satisfied with the work and the time I invested to make it better. So I'm very excited to see how it's going to flourish in the near future when we grow the team. So I'm very excited about things, what's going on right now.
Hey, I'm Lauren. I'm the constant admin here, and speaking about growing the team, we're getting into the slows of investing and investing mostly to expand the team, just because we have lots of work coming up, and it's kind of difficult to do with 4 or 5 people here. So yeah, lots of discussions of who we need and who we want to get into.
Cool. And then I'm Nihal, digital strategist here at Speak. Yeah, currently, well, past week or so, been making quite a few changes on making some of our processes efficient and a lot more landing page creation. Also somewhat distracted and saddened by the fact that we used to have a lake across, like, from my window, and guess what's being built there instead?
Massive tower?
No,
apartment building?
Probably like more townhouses. I lose access to my swans and ducks and get to look at ugly houses instead. So that's great.
Question for you.
Yes.
What are the swans there? Are they always in couples or are they individual?
I've seen couples, but it's normally individual.
It's good to know. Okay. I'm in an ongoing battle. Okay. Swans apparently mate for life, so they're supposed to be in couples, but sometimes you just see these lonely swans. Okay. Check that out before they kick them out and let me know. Report back. I'm in a battle about this with someone. Okay, well, Neil, you came loaded up with topics here, so I'm going to let you. We'll make sure everyone gets in, but maybe you're one that's most lighting the most fire for you wanting to discuss from that list that you gave.
Let's hop on.
Sure, yeah. So I think how we can maybe structure it is we can start with kind of the building in public, and then since we talk about implementations, we can talk about the kind of B2B integrations, and then past that point, we can look at Lawrence topics and maybe hit that bootstrapping point at the end if we can get to it. Cool. So I guess just to start when it comes to building in public, because this is something we've discussed a couple times, but the past, because I think by the time we brought it up, we kind of got thrown into the thick of raising and meeting with investors and all this stuff. But I think it's important for us to figure out a way for either you, Tyler, or the team in general to find a way to engage more in public conversations, engage more with just sharing what we're doing, the good, the bad, the ugly, and building a sense of people, like a community of people around what we're building as well. And just, I think people in the startup space and the young, bootstrap company space, they're very interested in seeing how other companies are doing as well. And we can all learn from each other by sharing what we're going through. And, for example, your chat with 𝗲𝗁 yesterday, which was apparently very insightful for us. We want the opportunity to have more of those as well. So, how do we go about that? And, I think right now Twitter is founder land, or most founders either live on Twitter or a personal blog of some kind. And, how do we fit that into maybe your daily responsibilities or 𝗲𝗁's daily responsibilities? And how does that, how do maybe Lauren and I support on that front as well?
I mean, Twitter is definitely the dominant one. And when you think of, at least, the story that a lot of people in entrepreneurship following right now is, and I should know his name specifically, but 𝗲𝗁 𝗪𝗏 from 𝗕ecie. I'm sorry if I got that name wrong. I don't know if I was even close, to be honest.
No, that was right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And it's interesting, right? Because there's a layer of authenticity when it comes from the person itself. I think it's hard for, people are actually, even there was a thread yesterday on it about building in public become part of the marketing strategy, but unless it is done from that intentional approach and actually it's not a bolted on strategy, then it's probably not going to have the same impact. And I would also say that there are a lot of people who build in public that are not successful either too, right? There's a couple, just like everything in our lives, there's these outliers that we see, or we see the very public facing visible sort of ones who are being successful, but we don't see the one guy who's been, developing these awesome little tools for 4 years and shares on Twitter, and he has 12 followers and no one pays attention, even though he's doing awesome stuff. So I think there's that sort of part that plays a part into it. And then there's one other thing I found, which I'm still working through. First of all, I struggle with Twitter. I don't know why. I'm a browser on Twitter, but I do not publish. But I guess depending on what kind of company you're doing, how much transparency is too much transparency, or if there's data sensitivity around some of the companies that you're working with, what are then your responsibilities? Because maybe it's, say, in marketing or media, maybe it's easier if you get a customer to talk about that because everyone's doing that. But if you're doing research, or you're doing these things, all of a sudden it becomes much more sort of intense. The responsibility is bigger. And also, if you're managing that, are you putting a sort of, not, I don't know, that's probably a very crude way to say it, but put a target on your shoulders or on your head by sharing this, those kind of successes. So I mean, overall, I think we're actually a very transparent company, and that was some of the feedback from 𝗲𝗁, who's a wonderful person, who has took a very specific, interest and willingness to want to support our company because we've done that through these office hours. He says he loves office hours with companies, but no company has really just had it in a conversation like this, where you literally do see the progression and how we're looking at product, how we're solving problems, happy moments, frustrations, all the things that come along with this sort of weekly routine that we've set up, and something I'm so grateful that we've done. So no solution. No, I didn't answer any of the questions there, anyhow, but just a couple of things around it that I've been thinking about as well.
Yeah, my first thought was around, it's okay, what type of categories or what type of company is because let's say if we are building in a public, it depends. Let's say if we are building something related to the copy.ai, there's nothing that much sensitive informations we are going to publish or we're going to talk about. So that's a one category. Is like the first question I would ask is like, okay, what type of information would you like to share publicly, by making sure we don't hit any compliances issues or anything related to that. The second part we initiated in terms of the indie hacker, but lately, I think so in last 3 or 4 months, nothing much updated over there on the indie hacker. And we see a quite bit of, not, I would say the traffic or quality leads, but yes, there was some tractions when we initiated that part. So the indie hacker is really good one in terms of the having the people who work in the startup environment or having that openly, publicly building the companies. And the third part is like, which we doing quite a bit from last 29 weeks, which is like, of course, the office hours, where we still talk about different things which Tyler already touched upon. But let's say, okay, building in public, but is there any objective, or do we want to share our lessons which we learned throughout the process? Or even let's say if Tyler is talking with investors, and even I sometimes hop on a call, is like, what are the things which we learned personally? We have all in the written notes where we would like to improve, or you must have when you do your second round, let's say, right? So those are the learning lessons are really helpful, to be honest, for someone who's just started, and that might save 6 months, a year and a half of their business plan timeline.
I would say we're sort of like also like building in public privately, which mean, I guess what that it means is like we're sending out quarterly updates and even like monthly updates to people who have opted into following the company. And, that's an interesting journey in itself. And, a lot of amazing relationships have been built just by sharing those updates. And we continually try to figure out how to optimize those. Like, the fear, I think this is the fear that comes from building in public and it's something that I think you need to get over. But you look around and sometimes you see like even people who are building in public and like, people are very good at selectively picking metrics or, showing growth. But no one wants to show where the things are going wrong. Or for example, what if you like, just for us, for example, we're on a great pace for signups this month, but if we do a monthly update this month, even though we're on a great pace, we might be skewed because last month a 100-person team signed up. And so we had a huge spike in users. And then what if that growth isn't the exact same, the same, growth that you want to see? And it's like as one of the owners of the company, and also looking to like fundraise and make a good impression on investors and stuff, which really is not that fun of a place to be in, but it's important and crucial. It's like they want to see positive numbers of growth. So how do you deal with that? And then how do you, when you're building in public, I guess, account for the negatives, or not necessarily the negatives, but maybe growth that doesn't match the projections of, for example, a venture company or things like that. Those are just some of the things that I'm thinking about as we prepare at the end of the month here, as we loom towards the end of the month with great metrics overall, but, maybe not the same growth that even we had seen last month compared to the one before, kind of thing.
I was thinking on that subject, maybe it just matters of, what's the proper audience that we're trying to get to, and maybe like Twitter isn't the best medium of getting to them. Just thinking about like how we're mostly catering towards people of like an interest in like research, of an interest in technology and things like that. And maybe like what's the character limit for Twitter? It's like a couple hundred. Maybe you can't really get to send the message you want to the right people with just that amount. And maybe it's more of like you need more of a visual transference of ideas. We do play with visuals quite a bit with all of our graphs and whatnot. So maybe there's probably a better medium for that. Even just I'm not even sure if it's just a matter of picking out a different social media altogether, or if it's just a matter of developing a better blog and focusing more on exploring and teaching and just sharing knowledge. And to me, I don't know if this is answering your question. I just don't think that Twitter is a really great way to share, complex ideas. I feel like Twitter's more aligned towards, sharing your opinion on the latest news, which is just kind of, throwing a pebble into the sea. It's just kind of, I don't know. It's good for some people, but for what we're trying to do, I feel like you have to, expand quite a bit more and explain ourselves quite a bit more. And I don't know, I'm just trying to think of like different social media that's good for that. I guess LinkedIn is kind of good just because it's more of a hotbed for people focused on their work and their research and stuff like that, whereas Twitter is a bit more casual in a way. I don't know.
I think it ties more into how because like I do agree with some of your points regarding target audience and explaining the ideas behind it, but at the same time I've seen people maybe not entirely, but there are people that will discuss complex topics. The problem with Twitter is it's like, if you're explaining a complex topic, now it turns into like a 10 tweet thread, right? Like you to say 400 words, you need to scroll for like 5 minutes, right? But I guess when it comes to building in public, to me, the way I view it over anything else, even beyond just a company, it's more an exercise in personal branding. And as much as I hate this term, thought leadership, right? Because for me, I've if we're talking about just human psychology and people will buy snake oil from a really good salesman, right? But it's like, what if you're a really good salesman or salesperson and you aren't selling snake oil, right? Won't that be appreciated by like a target audience, right? And I guess part of this is me thinking more from my like PR and like corporate communications background, where it's how do we get our company leadership in front of more eyes. Because at the end of the day, like investors, sure, they invest in product, they invest in an idea, for example, right? But a lot of times they're also just investing in the team, right?
Yep.
And I think you've heard that from like, for example, from past applications like Y Combinator and stuff. They'll ask you, what other ideas do you have, right? Because to them, it's like, even if we don't like this one idea, if we like you, we're more likely to take a chance on you, right? So I guess to a degree, it's also how do we amplify our voices as leaders in this space in maybe a more advanced way for a more advanced audience, while still making it accessible to the public, right? So that's where the difficulty comes, because the people that want to hear from 𝗲𝗁, for example, are probably very different from the people that want to hear from Tyler, right? So yeah, just something for us to think about, because it's hard, I find, as a you're doing investor calls for let's say 20 hours a week. Can you really find time to write like a 500, 600 word post for your LinkedIn, right? So it's like, how do we go about simplifying that process?
Especially a good one, like not just a throwaway.
Exactly.
No
Exactly.
thought here. I saw a really interesting tweet. Someone said your first 10,000 tweets are just testing, which is really interesting. I think, Lauren, there's something that we've continually had to strive towards as a team, which is like, yes, we're doing complex things, but if we can't communicate it succinctly in short messages, then we're actually failing. So I think that there's actually a practice for us to be able to try and do that. And also just, what you touched on, something nice, Lauren, there too, was like the educational part that adds peripheral, I don't know if that word right there is peripheral value, but like around some of the work that we're doing. So like, what's a huge one that I know I've spent a lot of time on, and it's actually helped us land contracts, is how do you get good audio quality? Or, what are limitations of recording through this microphone versus that microphone? Or, what, like, even it's that's maybe boring to some people, but not to other people, but different file types that lend to better speech to text. You know what I mean? Like, these are maybe, again, very niche topics, but they're ones that we spent a lot of time investigating to set up. And we've seen patterns and signals in the past that by caring about that stuff, it actually gives a lot of confidence in people that they are working with people, who are experts in this, who have spent a lot of time trying to set people up for success. So not everything's connected, but I mean, Vatsal's done some incredible work on, whether it's challenges in creating like, like mobile compatible recording, and the difficulties of that on different devices and browsers and things. Like, these are huge challenges that people are trying to solve. And if we can show, how, not only how we solve them, but the process that went into them, there's a lot of trust that's built up if these are like well-intentioned, hardworking people solving complex things. And, that's what we want to be known as. Like, there's nothing better than what I think we've had recently, where it's like people come to us, they know they're dealing with media, dealing with language, and they have a problem, and we solve the problem. Like, that's what makes me happy every single day, is when we can solve a problem for someone.
Yeah, and it's like, on that point, I have like 25 list of items which I wanted to write on the different blog posts, which is like sitting right now, sitting on a travel. It is just more about, it's like, okay, you just don't want to publish, you just also want to publish the quality blog, let's say, and it's like not just have the quantity. So it's like quantity versus quality idea. It's like, then if I want to write the quality, is like, I had a challenge, like write one blog a week, and but it's sometimes hard, sometimes okay to manage it, but yeah, it's like, then it also helps us to drive the business, like by looking at also on those technical articles, like, oh whoa, this product does support this change. I had the same issue, which I also found on dev.to. One of the article was on the recorder, and that person had the same technical issue, and if I had, which I did, I put the comment on them. It's like, hey, here's the speaker, and this is what we support too. And it's like, these are the problems we found, and we might see some traffic also from there. So it's also more not just about the business every time, it is also more about supporting the community, supporting people, and helping them at the same time by building in public.
The way that I copped out with, I was doing writing at the end of the year and started of this year, was like, I would put a little sub note. I remember you saw it, that's on my blog, where it was like, this is a work in progress.
Yes,
I'll be back to improve this later.
Yeah.
And like, a lot of those were sometimes just pretty rough thoughts, but some of those pages have actually driven hundreds and hundreds of people to my personal site. And actually, some people are spending like 8-10 minutes on those pages. So there's something of value there, even if it's a rough thought. And the way that you think or the way that I think, or I mean, anyone here on our team, like, even if you can get a skeleton or some loose structure into a blog post and then come and iterate back on it, especially if it picks up traction, is still a worthwhile endeavor. But I'm with you on like making the time, and between, trying to work out and keep the bot, like all these things that allow you to try to be like a high performer every day, amongst also the company, and trying to have some sort of personal life and all this stuff. It's tough, but you also can't make excuses. And I think the part is like,
Yes.
the people who I've seen be most successful seem to have a routine of constant creation. And that's something that I've struggled to do. I really have found it a challenge, but like, I ask myself, imagine if I had written a blog post a day, even if 50% had gone on tylerbryden.com and 50% had gone on Speak AI. Like, imagine how much of a difference that would have made now if that had compounded. And you can't go back, but you can only start now, and you can only try to move forward.
I think what really helps you to stay consistent with like creating anything is to do it with someone else too. We've been doing this for about 30 weeks straight now, and I think it was just Tyler, talking to himself every day, or every week rather. He probably would have given up after a couple of weeks, but just keeping everybody accountable to each other. Everybody's wanting to grow and create, even though we're just kind of shooting the shit talking here. It's still extremely helpful just to have some feedback constantly too. Even after we're done with these office hours, we're kind of talking about, oh, that was a good one, no, something went wrong there, and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just definitely helpful to not be alone in it, and to constantly be growing together in a way.
Thank you. Underestimate, first of all, how much I love the sound of my own voice. So that's one thing. But the second one too is like, we put it out in public, right? We said we were going to do these office hours, and then like You know, like shamefully, we missed one because we had our team get together, and I felt horrible about that for a whole week. I felt like we had just like betrayed this non-existent maybe audience, but it's still in my head because we had put it out there publicly. And it's one of those things that we've seen applications try to, you know, capitalize on and do is like put something out there in public and commit to it, and then do it consistently, and also schedule the time in advance so that there's no way around it. So, you know, 𝗍𝗏, I know we probably got a little bit off your topic, but one of the things I think, you know, is something out there. If we're taking this approach, building in public is a really good accountability tool for you as well too. And for us, the fact that we're prioritizing certain metrics and communicating that to people who are interested in our company, it makes us make sure that we're focusing on the things that matter most, and then also debugging or, you know, strategizing around why something went right or why something went wrong too. So lots of great stuff that's come out from this process, and I think it's a topic continually worthwhile to readdress, and just finding the best channels and strategies to execute on it best. Okay, beautiful. Wow. Okay, I felt wrapped up. Okay, so I think, you know, I mean, 𝗍𝗏, you have another topic, which I think we can just hop right into it at point two. If you want to share anything, I guess, from your perspective. One thing quickly that 𝗲𝗲 said, and I hope if 𝗲𝗲 watches this one, thank you, 𝗲𝗲. It was funny, he did that presentation, but he didn't realize he had his webcam off, so he was just this dark figure the entire video. I almost swore. I forget what I was going to say. I got too excited. No, go ahead. Go ahead, 𝗍𝗏. I lost it.
The question 𝗍𝗏 had is like more about, okay, when does it more make sense to do the customizations for let's say B2C or B2B, and what are those contract deals make sense even for us to invest time, let's say from the support, from the business, or from even the development. And we do have a couple of requests on the customizing the whole white label solution for a company, and what's the deal size or how much they would like to invest in a product, and at the same time, how much do we want to support? So 𝗍𝗏, I'll get back to you. It's like, okay, what are your thoughts on this?
So I think the big one, it also ties, I think, a little bit into your idea of, you know, integrations and opportunities with more B2B clients versus maybe individuals looking for specific solutions. And, you know, because obviously there's the, when someone signs up for the platform and uses the platform as is, because technically that's the service you're paying for, right? We built something, you're paying to use this thing we've built. But then also us being a team that likes to, you know, innovate and likes to build things for individuals or teams, how do we maybe prioritize or even determine which customization requests are worth working on that actually contribute to the growth of the platform, and, you know, what's more just like, we're doing you a solid, right? Like like we're just trying to help you achieve this problem, which is fine, but is that a cycle we can sustain forever? Because at that point, it almost would seem that we need to have, you know, a section of our team dedicated to just kind of app improvements and platform improvements, and a section that works on, you know, custom integration, and that part of the organization would probably almost behave more like an agency versus a software company, right? Like that part of the business. So just wondering, how do we balance the two? And if we need to, in a way, because it's like, if the platform by itself becomes successful enough, do we even need to do custom implementations unless they're huge contracts, right? Like, if someone pays us $50K to build them a custom solution, we'll take that job, right? But if someone's just paying for, let's say, a force plan, right, like $1,000 or $99 a month, how much support do we provide at that level as well, right? That goes beyond like software support. Obviously, if it's improving the platform because something's broken, that's one thing. But if it's in a way, can you help us adapt the platform to fit our needs better? To me, that almost becomes like, like a dev side cost, where it's how much do we charge for dev work, for example?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. The first thought I have is, like, for example, it depends on the deal size too. Let's say if that's a $50,000 contract for, let's say, 6 months, then okay, then what it indicates that platform doesn't support any of their needs. The platform doesn't have any of those functionality. That means either the objective or what they want to achieve is out of the scope, maybe. Because how come after working on 2.5 years, 3 years now, the platform doesn't support and they need to pay $50,000 contract? The $50,000 contract does make sense if they want to do the 5-year deal and they want to access X number of audio, video hours, or maybe the other different integrations. That makes sense. The third part is, okay, the platform support 80% of their needs, but 20% of needs to be addressed in next 2 months. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, we got some timeline. We are also not changing drastically the priority also on the business end and also on the development end. And let's say the last piece is, for example, if those integrations and also, let's say, the custom development needs more work, then we need some other team, right? Because with the small team, those questions really doesn't matter, because either I'm working on the technical or either team is working on those changes. So we do know our, let's say, the sprints, we do know our timeline, and we can quickly adjust those things. But let's say if you're talking with the 15 people or 30 people, I have my cousin here and he's working at a large team, and it's like have hundreds of people, 6 project manager, 9 BA, 15 developers. So now then it goes to the team by team, and they also have the different teams who is working on front end, who is working on back end, who is working database. Then you need the coordination, understand what's going on in each department. That definitely takes, let's say, 6 months and maybe 100K contract, because that's what we have the benefit right now, which we can move fast, help companies and get the deal done.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that point, I don't really think that needs a lot of brainstorming, because if the needs are aligned with our pipeline, which we already want to build and which we have sort of a to-dos in on our board, then yeah, let's just readjust a little bit of those things. And I think so we also touch upon this customizations on the recorder end. It's like how we converted the opportunity or the demand or the request for other users to at the same time.
Just, I remember what Faisal did say to me, which was like, a lot of software companies are just a facade for a professional services company. You know what I mean? And the software is just like basically an input or a lead channel for that. And that especially seems to happen as you get into larger deal sizes, but then you do see other sizes of contracts or the way people are pricing software platforms, where the whole point is it becomes a self-serve platform and all the work goes into documentation and building things into the platform intuitively, so that the professional services side or customization or massive amounts of support is not needed. And like, $50,000 can sound great, but $50,000 could also be horrible, if you don't manage that right, or you commit to something, or you take something into a direction that doesn't, again, benefit other users on the platform. And that's one thing that, as I talked to a friend who is really in a growth mode for their company, highly venture backed, talked about them having to turn away significant contracts because it didn't fit into the thesis of their company. And that was a very hard thing for them to do. But basically their responsibility is, as a software company, is that if it doesn't scale, then we can't take this on, even how good the money seems at the time. So there's definitely some things to consider from the sort of custom implementation burnout. I think, there is something really interesting about other thing that we've seen, which is, do we spend our time optimizing the current system and making it work better, or do we add more functionality and iterate based off what people say that they want? And that's a continuous trade-off that we're making. And just one other part to that is, like, sometimes we just get these one-off requests or support. And when you're like, especially when you're in the initial stages, you're really trying to help the company. You're really trying to like either close a contract or just like have a successful onboarding. But even a small task I've already can see can like spiral out of control in the amount that it takes. So like I could say, hey, can someone says, hey, do you need to do this? Can I say, okay, well, I can help with the first part, but then I need to ask Lauren for a little bit of support. And then I need Tim to do something. And then, the whole thing can't go through until 𝗲𝗄𝗀 then approves it and pushes it. So it's like a small request that seemed like it was just a little thing to just make help actually took a combined 4 hours of work from the team. And that's expensive. Everyone here's time is valuable. We have limited resources and, even the weight of context shifting or switching can be pretty detrimental if you're focused on something else and all of a sudden you're taking out of it for a task that came out of nowhere. So lots of things that have consequences when you do custom work or even say yes to anything that I've seen a lot recently.
Yeah, custom implementations kind of makes sense in like the early stage, especially when it comes to like when we're bootstrapping. It's a matter of like return on investment, because we put like 2.5, 3 years of work into the software, and we've gotten some good subscriptions getting going, but it's not really exactly paying the bills. So the custom implementation is just good to put a little bit of time and get a decent payback from it. But it's also, you have to think about how far you go into it too, because there's then opportunity costs that we're losing out on, because this is time that could be going towards developing the software even more. And as far as like profitability, as far as becoming a unicorn, if you will, or millions and millions of ARR, it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of manpower to just get to that, just based on custom implementations. But where software is beneficial is that you can put a lot of work and then people pay you without you having to interact with them. They're kind of paying for your product as opposed to your services. So that's extremely important for scaling over time. And it's probably why software is so damn popular nowadays, because you can make a lot of money with very little costs, with very little manpower.
The little is too expensive, sir. The little term is too expensive. But,
the what?
With the little team, the little word, little is too expensive in terms of the manpower, the software, the people cost. That is very expensive too at the same time.
Yeah. It depends. It depends on what software you're building exactly and what kind of specialties you need within the team. But yeah, it depends on a lot of different things there, I suppose. But it just makes sense for us because we did try to go the bootstrapping route. If we, just took investment right away, we could have just said, screw custom implementations. We're just going straight for software. Probably going to be in the red for a few years, but then, so long as, our predictions of the market and the demand for the product syncs up with our expectations, it's definitely worth it. But I don't know, it's definitely much of a balancing act. I'm sure that when we get into investments, we're going to be much more pickier about our custom implementations that we want to do.
Even at the same time, that helps even to scale the product, right? We are adding also the features which make sense even for the users. So the custom implementations is also linked with what features we are introducing to the product. Let's say we just integrated with the intercom for the support, and if you see that's very complex tool, and do you think that they build from the day one? Absolutely not. They understand what user asking for, and then they integrated the whole product and build inbound, outbound messaging, test, email automation, banner, everything. So that at the same time, that help us to not create the complex product, I would say, but the product which supports the user's needs, and that solves obviously the time either or the cost. So one of them, we are, let's say, we are saving time, which is the tool is expensive, but at the same time we are saving the time and having that organization structure to support our customers. So the same thing for the speak is like going to benefit the customers in the futures to have all these features in build from this custom implementation journey. So I see with that lens, that's create more opportunities, scaling the product, having more features no, I wouldn't say the features, it's more about the solutions which can help them to do more work efficiently.
I think we've also had moments where we've been asked to do something that doesn't make sense with our roadmap or our product. And it's been pretty clear to the entire team that doesn't make sense. So I think
For
that
an example, text to speech.
Yes,
it's like
yes.
text to speech.
Yes, which yes, I don't know if that's a coincidence that you mentioned that or not, but that's something that
basically right now what we are doing is like sort of a speech to text. Right now the whole engine is running on the speech to text, and we are trying to do some more analysis. But if someone asks at this point today, is like, oh, can you do the text to speech, just create the different clone voice? That's like, that is not the whole concept. Or even if they are trying to pay 100K contract, that is maybe right now, not maybe, it's out of the scope for the current pipeline.
The part that I've heard, really nicely from, good feedback from investors, and then also from Faisal yesterday and stuff too, is like, wrapping around anything that you do around, measurable return on investment, or again, problem that you're solving for customers. So like for us, before we even ask, do we want to implement this? I think like the checkbox that I'm starting to think about is like, does this save time for a customer, therefore decreasing costs of the work that they're doing? Or, is it actually potentially increasing the revenue for our customer? And that one's a little bit more difficult sometimes, specifically with our product, but we've tied, for example, transcripts to SEO. Like there's lots of ways that we can do that. But if we start to really make sure that we're hitting that checkbox for creating true value, especially through an organizational or business lens, then it will also prioritize and deprioritize certain requests that are coming our way. So I think that that's been an important thing to talk about, because one of the constant things is great. The system is incredible, but the value proposition that you're communicating to your customers, or still people digging in and saying like, why do your customers value this so much? And the truth is, it's like, it is saving them it's a crap ton of time, and either time maneuvering through media and searching through it, or that if for them to figure out this problem, they were going to have to hire a whole development team and figure out, and it would cost a ton of time and money anyways. So like we need to make sure that we're wrapping around those things if we're going to continue on to articulate our message and why we built the system in a compelling way. So does this answer where are we here right now? Oh yeah, 12:49. Holy crap.
Yep.
We've got a couple more pieces in here. I guess, Lauren, you brought up the bootstrapping, which was also what 値𝗶𝗏 addressed on. This is a big topic, so I don't know how much we'll get through, because I would like to get a couple other pieces in here, but maybe we can touch lightly on this and revisit in the future, which is something that you touched on, Lauren, which is, you can go raise money right away. But I just listened to a great conversation from 𝗕tože from Tilt, and then Justin Kahn, who created Twitch. Both of them burned through $70 million. James for Tilt ultimately was acquired, but was not considered a successful acquisition. And Justin Kahn's last business just shut down completely. So talked about the risk of actually just injecting cash into the business at the start, because it doesn't make you be lean, and it doesn't make you actually have to solve real problems, which is one thing that's really interesting. So cash, he says, is basically just I hate this word, but just exaggerates, exasperates, God damn it, all the solution, like all the problems or the solutions that you have. Money is not the problem solver of a lot of things, especially in this kind of environment. And then from another perspective, if you're a founder or you're early on in a company and you say have equity in it, one of your main goals is not to overly dilute your company and lose control of your company. And so if you go too early, some of the feedback we get is we're still a young team with not multiple exit founders who came from Uber, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, if we had came up with just a concept and no traction, the only way, for example, for us to get a good investment even would probably be they take 50% of the company, and then you're now even building something that you don't even have full control of. And so I think there's benefits to bootstrapping. A lot of people would, in their ideal world, love to figure out if they could just bootstrap a company all the way to success, but I think that's not necessarily reasonable or possible sometimes with the way that we're approaching what we're building and what we truly want to build as a team. It's not just a simple widget or, you know, a service business that you can bootstrap. And we've seen the ramifications from my own perspective, the dilution of focus that comes from bootstrapping and trying to, you know, balance, for me, trying to do service work to then balance with the dev work that we're doing and trying to scale software. And I think recently we've seen growth in our software, first of all, because it's gotten to a tipping point in being valuable. 𝗕𝗏 has helped on marketing, but also I've been able to more focus on sales, specifically around software instead of custom stuff. And all that's now accumulated to a spot where things are trending and putting us into a spot where maybe bootstrapping is no longer the ideal, because we want to bring really good people onto the team. We want to scale up the marketing. We see an engine is working. We're getting signups when we're not talking to anyone, when it's just sitting out there at night. We wake up every day and there's more people in the system than the day before. And so there's also enough signals for us to want to make that investment and also not dilute our company horribly and be taken advantage of on bad terms. I would say even a level of education that our team has now about dealing with investors and what this looks like is important. So I think bootstrapping is very viable, and you know, in an idealistic world, is something amazing to accomplish, but depending on the situation, it's not always possible. And also, I feel like for myself, there's a responsibility to pay back the team who's invested in so much, and sometimes that requires you going this route. So a couple of reasons why I think we're sort of in the situation we're at now.
I find bootstrapping is a very good way of gaining perspective on the company you're trying to build. I feel like if you have, you know, just a huge injection of cash just right at the beginning, you're not really going to have an understanding of all of your expenses and like the kind of work that needs to be going into to generate the sort of revenue to just keep it at least profitable, you know, breaking even. Bootstrapping really helps you to understand you know, the kind of work that's really necessary for even just, you know, you to live on like a small scale, and then like what will be necessary for you to advance to the next level, you know, whether or not that's size or whether or not that's technology. Or I would love to bootstrap forever. It's a lot easier. It's a lot less a lot less work having to deal with.
There's a lot of stress at the same time.
Yeah, so it's trading stress for stress. It just depends on what kind of stress you want to live with.
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people who went bootstrap and then got funding and said they couldn't believe they bootstrapped. It was, you know, a torturous process. But then people who took on investment who didn't do it the right way also said they wish they had never taken on that investment. So I think it's just about making the compromises in the right place and doing it the right way.
But my very basic question is like, at any stage, why do you need more money? It's like, let's say if we are in the stage, we do need some money to do X, Y, and Z to get the compliances or to have more people to support other customers, or maybe on the marketing and sales side, so you can reach out to the more people. But let's say if you think 2 years back, it's like, okay, we might have the different scale, but at the same time, do we know the real core pieces of the problem which we want to address on the next day? Yes, which we have the vision and the mission about what we are trying to accomplish, and we reach is like you said, is like to the tipping point is like, okay, now everything is hitting or making sense to everyone. It's like before I was so frustrated because I was getting so much questions, or at the same time about why do we have X, why do we have Y on the platform? But because I also personally see that this is important to have one in the 3 months, because I see that's coming, that request is coming, and that happened all the time so far, and that's gonna absolutely happen in the future too. So it is more about why do we need money and when, instead of we need money.
Just quickly, because I know 𝗕𝗏 was the one who brought this topic up, so I'll make sure he gets some insights in here. But just like, it's felt so good, even in that email thread that we were part of today, that's where it's like, someone asked the question about, you know, how to manage this. And it's like, the whole system's already built to do that. You know what I mean? And to have something there that we, you know, had predicted that was going to be important and was solved a major, you know, part of a process or a project or a company, you know, onboarding successfully. And it feels good to have things in place, and it feels like we're in the right spot then. And then when we get multiple requests from different customers about the same thing. I think that's when you start to have the signal of, okay, we're in the right space, we can invest, because I think, yeah, like you said, a year and a half ago.
Oops, I think he frished here.
Or we're just thinking very hard.
Yeah.
We need to kick him, though. I don't know how that.
No, I
works.
think he's.
If he leaves, will it end the call?
No. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess.
Yeah.
to
Any other
finish-
thoughts, Nihal, on this point?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to the point about predictive versus. I mean, from the bootstrapping perspective, obviously the pressure there is, you know, if you go, you know, if the company doesn't work out, it's all from your pocket, right? Essentially, as like co-founders or founders, like I'm sure there's been money put into the system from, you know, your end, like from. So, how do you reduce your personal risk while still, I guess, not really putting yourself in a risky place from a business perspective as well? So just a thought on that front.
So, sort of a bet on what do you think and what
Exactly.
do you believe?
And I guess with the bootstrap, you know, when it comes to bootstrapping, you know, at the end of the day, do people like, that's one thing I've thought about is like, does anyone apart from like other startup founders, like, do they really care about whether your company's like bootstrap? I mean, investors, I do think have a certain level of like, I don't know if I want to say respect for the fact if you can get to a reasonable like revenue rate, right, with just your own funding, like just funding out of your own pocket. But it's definitely something to think about. And you know, does bootstrapping maybe limit the amount of innovation you can do at a reliable pace? Or, you know, is it just more of a matter of slow growth versus trying to, you know, shoot for the moon every single day?
You have a lot more control over your investment
Exactly.
when you're just bootstrapping.
Exactly.
Like say you have $100,000 and you can either throw that into Tesla and you can just sit on that and just wait and hope that he doesn't smoke weed on Joe Rogan again. And or you can put $100,000 into your own company, and the company's going to do as well as, you know, so your company's going to do as well as how hard you work, apparently, essentially, or how good of a marketer and how good of a product, how good of an idea you have. It's like putting your investment more on yourself, an investment of more money and time, as opposed to just essentially just throwing money and gambling in a way and just hoping the stock goes up.
Just to add one more point on your checklist is like how quickly you also retread your product and readjust based on the needs. That might drive quite a bit of traffic at the same time, having understanding about what change and what not from the early days. Okay, welcome back, Tyler.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what this will turn out in the recording. This is the first time that we've had a problem really throughout this whole time. So I hope I don't hop off again. I'm nervously watching my internet and I hope that doesn't happen again. So I missed something. I probably missed some context. I don't know what else, you know, for me, I guess, you know, just one other part is, you know, you want to have really good people on your team, and like it or not, you know, funding is an indicator that you're going to be there for a while and that you've got support and validation. And, you know, it's hard to, you know, we're lucky to have a group of, I would not say misfits. I don't know who you are. I appreciate you all. But, you know, a group of people who are willing to, you know, come in at an early stage when an investment wasn't actually, I mean, we had some small things through grants, but there's a lot more certainty that you're going to be able to work on something you're passionate about for a long time, and if an investment comes in. And so there's a signal for recruiting, which is a very important part of company success, and it's also a marketing signal and signal for legitimacy for companies who are working with you too. So I think there is a lot of reasons there. I'm not afraid to admit, I've said in the past, it's not my. I've been very skeptical of it because I've had the education and I've been exposed to the tough stories that you see. I've also been exposed to the good stories that you see. But I think that a lot of people approach this kind of stuff without the scrutiny that's required or the thoughtfulness that's required in realizing the consequences of taking either path. And so I've really tried to be careful and selective with how we're doing this. And I hope that it's setting us up for success, and something that we're all going to benefit from. So we're at 1 p.m. here. I know we're got time. That's why, we have a couple more minutes. I mean, Lauren, you have two interesting topics, but I'm just trying to think of, I guess, what do you guys want to do here? We're at 1 p.m. We're at our hour time.
This is good. I mean, we can talk about the B2B opportunities, which I would like to address at some point. And I think we also touch on the previous office hours related to integrations and how we can more scale the product with the available products already exist in the market, and how we can link with them and have the better solution for the user. So sounds like the whole office hours, to be honest, to talk about that. So Lauren, I'll pass mic to you.
Okay, I just want to actually bring up the Create with Voice that you guys were talking about earlier this week. It seems like even 𝗕𝗏 was putting some work into it. I was curious what 𝗕𝗏 was actually doing.
I would say work, it's a very interesting rudimentary system that we do. But if you go with Create with Voice right now, I mean, it's sort of counterintuitive. It doesn't even match what the name of the website is, but basically we've been playing around with some image generation. And one of the things that's been, we've been trying to think about, which is like, how do you represent, for example, a conversation or a webinar or a note that you've written? Like, how do you represent that through imagery, or like, how can you summarize that? And then there's like obviously very specific practical ways that we've looked at that through automatic summarization or the insights extraction that we're doing, or running sentiment over it and finding the most positive and negative moments. But we've also we see a future where, if done right, there's this ways to sort of represent a conversation in a more visual way. And this is, I guess, our first attempt at it. If you type something in, you might not, that the response that you get might not make that much sense, but it's using some of this sort of, some machine learning models to basically generate a unique image based off a query or a sentence or a statement that you've put into this text box. And very rudimentary, abstract right now, but at some point, I think there's the opportunities to describe something and create something that represents that, and it can be a powerful thing. So does that necessarily fit with our thesis of increasing revenue or decreasing costs right now? Not 100% sure. I do think there's something really powerful around, like, even a couple of the ones that we've generated, I think are like, I would love to share this as a post on social media, because when you see the image, you're like, holy crap, it just stops you. So when you're scrolling, you're like, whoa, what the hell is this? And that's something alone is interesting, but I think there's still a gap.
Create an NFT for that. Don't put on the social media. Create an NFT for that and make it worth it.
That's what I was saying. I was like, it just needs to become an NFT. Like, that's a whole other business. Like, it has nothing
exactly.
to do.
Use as convert something into the business instead of posting on the social media. That will change a lot of things. Even, I mean, people buy quite unique stuff because, well, that's a very high impacted word, but because let's say if you had something like that, Tara, and if you had created, let's say, either from our office hours or something else from someone else's office hours, and if you put it as an NFT, someone might buy as a 50K, 100K, you never know.
I'll take it. I mean, we've seen a couple of sort of companies post similar things, and the comments or the feedback on that has been, this is opening up a whole new world. So it's really interesting. I mean, I feel like a little dumb in this of like, not fully comprehending, comprehending the space. But if people truly do value it and see it, I'm happy to do it.
People are crazy. Billions of people in the world. You'll find definitely someone.
That's it. So that was one of 𝗕𝗏's things. I did a quick search for domains, didn't find anything that really stuck out. But anyways, I think on top of the main work to do, we actually have a very imaginative team who enjoys experimenting. And the reason why we're doing this stuff is this is not just a selfish, not that that's a selfish drive, but just not a, our only drive is not like professional business thing. We're very curious in this technology and the applications of it and the possibilities in the world and what the future may look like as technologies like this emerge. And so when I'm not working on Speak, most likely I'm doing something in the same space because it's truly my passion. And I know that there's multiple people on our team like that. So Tim, 𝗕ecie, 𝗨𝗙, I was a little left out of that one, but we did a bit of experimenting with the Create with Voice and image generation, and it produced some pretty cool results. We got some great images back already based on some of the descriptions. So you can let us know if you want to test that out at 𝗨𝗏. I did mechanical elves in a DMT Wonderland, and I was very happy with the results I got back. So some pretty interesting stuff. 𝗕ecie had mechanical lions in a desert. That was a pretty cool image that was generated too. So we had some fun just for a little bit at the start of the week.
I think to that point, it's like sometimes even if there are projects that aren't necessarily directly related to your main product that you're building, even if it's just a technology showcase, right? Like I think there's power in that, even if it's just from a slight buzz generation, right? Like you saw that like yesterday, I think I posted that 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗏, right? Their video editing software, like they just did it, and I'm sure it was just someone on their team was interested in building it. They built it and shared it as under 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗏, right? But the odds of them maybe even integrating that into their system, maybe it's closer in line with what they do, but doesn't mean that the tech can't necessarily be useful on our end either. So
the only way to know is to get something out there and see.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? A lot of people
Yeah.
will just not even release anything or try, and they'll never even know. So now, for example, maybe we see what kind of images that people are interested in creating, and all of a sudden there's a pattern that emerges. Or if I'm ever, just as one example, there's a company that came to us and asked about how they're trying to represent language in iconography. So using icons to represent. So the idea was the icons could translate across languages so that you didn't have to know the language, but the icon or imagery would still fit. And it's like, maybe this is too much of an extension right now, but is there an opportunity for image representation through generation like this to have an impact and actually be a solution instead of not just this fairyland abstract thing? So until you try, you don't know. A lot of things that I've, even that we've gotten and figured out at Speak has because, we took a very small prototype and pitched it, and it became something that people truly wanted. And so, that's the plan with everything. Yeah.
Just test the water, see what happens.
Yep. Makes sense. All good. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh, that's a good way to end on the Friday. We didn't share any. I don't think I will pull any up, but it's pretty cool what has happened from some of those. So you can check out Create with Voice. Tim would probably be horrified if he found out that we were talking about this and that people might go to that, because I think he was having a little bit of server load challenges on that if you did too many requests. But if you do find your way there, let us know what you think and share the image back with us. We'd love to see it. So this is Office Hours 29. Thank you for anyone who watched, who read, who listened. Appreciate you guys joining. I'm sorry I popped out for a minute. I hope this recording stays comprehensible. I don't really know what happens, but
It was all good.
I think so. Okay, you guys were still talking. I didn't expect to see you all there continuing, to be honest. I thought I had broken everything. So thanks.
No, it was just a second. It converted me as a host, and then you become a host as soon as you joined. So it was all good.
Okay. Any last words then before we close the room?
No, pretty good. If you're watching and listening or any podcast, again, there's a little plug here from my end on the technical team. If you're interested to help us in any way on the technical end, you're welcome. I'm not a big believer of the role. It is more about your interest and your passion to help the product. So yeah, just send me a direct message or send us any of us an email if you're interested to support any way you want to.
Beautiful. Lauren, good?
Likewise. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
Have a good
Thank
day.
you so much, guys.
Okay.